Hey guys, good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Service Without Excuses podcast. We're sponsored by Sotellus. You can go visit them at sotellus.com/Rob Lyon. That's SOTELLUS/Rob Lyon, ROBLYON. They are the Cadillac review management software. They sponsor us. I use them in my own business. I love them. It's actually become a revenue stream for New Jersey's Best. So we love them. We're really appreciated to have them as a sponsor on the show. As well as NewJersey'sBest.com, finding your best service providers for your service needs in the state of New Jersey. I want to welcome our guest tonight, Mr. Al Levi. Al, I've heard of you for many years, and I'm truly, it's an honor to have you here on the podcast. I've had many people. I watch different podcasts of people talk about, I've been trying to get this person. I've had multiple people tell me they had to get you on, but Ryan Matthews, our common friend, was the one that really pushed it home. He's been here on the podcast. In fact, I wanted him here tonight, but he had some other commitments, so it wasn't going to work. But I really appreciate you being here. Al is one of the secrets behind a lot of big growth in businesses, both in the franchising model and as well as the independent model, and getting people to not think about being on the truck and being the truck technician that has to do everything, but having systems and automation in place from an operational standpoint, a logistical standpoint that really can help your business grow. So I want to have Al introduce himself. Al, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I do want you to know that I pay a lot of people to go around and tell other podcasters that they should have me on their show. No, just kidding out there.
It's been zero podcasters. It's been real people that have used your services. Absolutely every single one of them have talked about you and all glowing things. And I know we had the comment, we're talking, we both lived in Long Island. You were actually from there. I moved there and lived in the greater New York area in the rat race that was there. One of the things I didn't get a chance to talk about was my partner. We were very, there's Oscar and Felix, the TV show. We're both old enough to remember the
You have to explain that to the younger people listening here, what that means, but I know what
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So the Odd Couple, you had one guy that was very, so we say whatever went. He didn't care. He smoked a cigar, was a slob, whatever the case was. But he was a personality. He had a tremendous personality. People loved him. The other guy, Felix, was analytical and driven and very articulate with his details. I was Felix. He was clearly Oscar. Now, we needed both. People really liked it because I was very matter-of-fact. Now, he could be very matter-of-fact because he's an atypical New Yorker, grew up in Whitestone, and I'm not, but I'm a matter-of-fact kind of person, so I want to be very detailed. And I used to tell him, where I'm going with this is, how can you not be on time in New York? And he's like, you haven't lived here. Nobody's on time. And I says, well, we got to try to figure out how to be on time. We're in a disaster restoration business. We have a cleaning business together. We got to find a range of how to get there. It can't be whenever they're going to show up, sometime between 9 and 5. That's the cable company, bro. That's gone. Nobody wants to hear that anymore. They want instant service, or they want at least good communication about the service they're getting. If you're going to be late, you're going to be late. Tell them. So we implemented a few systems in place from my background, which drove him completely insane in the beginning. It was CRM programs. What are you talking about? Organize? I have it all in a spreadsheet. No, that ain't flying. I can't do that. I don't.
Hold on a second. What? I should write it down.
Yeah, it was a spreadsheet. So he's a wonderful guy, good friend, and we were partners for many years until I decided to make the jump and moved to Jersey. You moved to Arizona, and I went to Jersey out of Long Island in New York. But please tell our listeners a little bit more about your background if they haven't and they don't know much about you at this point, which I imagine is very few. But
there's plenty of you out there. So I tell you what, I take what I do seriously, but I do not take myself seriously. And I was one of 6. I was the last. I was the youngest, and my father was like, you're all not that important. I said, so it's a different kind of philosophy. And I was lucky, I was the 3rd generation. It was started out of my granddad's gas station, the business, 1936. And then my dad and my uncle took off and created the fuel oil industry. And for those who don't live in the Northeast, fuel oil, think propane. It's just like propane for heating and such. So we did that. My brothers and I was the last of the brothers to arrive full-time. Now, that doesn't mean we didn't work. We were 3rd generation, but if anybody knows about a family business, by the time you're 8, you're doing stuff, whether it's licking envelopes when they used to mail stuff, we're cleaning toilet, dumping baskets. We would ride as helpers with the guys on the trucks. And so we came to the business, and I went off to school, and people go, "Oh, that's nice. You went to school. You got a diploma." Well, my diploma was in engineering, to which, when I brought my diploma home, I showed it to my dad, and he said, "Very proud of you. Here's your toolbox." And off I went. And so, I had been working in the business while I was in school. Wasn't like there's a break. It was always working in the business. And I said, it was something that was in our blood. Actually, it was very funny. If anybody had a video back then, which they didn't, think of 6 kids and parents sitting around a table, and we're having conversation about a job and about this, and then we're talking about the Yankees, and then we're talking about who's going to be playing, and then we're talking about another job, and that's the conversation of somebody who grows up in a family business. So we were highly immersed in it. But part of the problem was the mandate from my dad, my uncle, who that came next, was hurry up, do something, the money will follow. Now, we are the lucky ones that was true. But after being there for a while, I could see that it was just crazy. Every day was like we just went into business today. Imagine that. We were a big size company at this point. There were 70 people, 25 techs. We're not like a little mom and pop shop. But the more people we brought on, it was akin to putting more gasoline on a fire. You with me? Mm-hmm. And so one thing that my fancy degree had taught me about is that, to problem solve. And it actually is what made me a really good tech. So I realized I had read this great book, E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And actually, it wasn't my idea to read it. My 2 best, greatest friends, Ellen Rohr, who is a monster anybody out there in the contracting world, hopefully knows who Ellen Rohr is. She's the financial queen. She was the mother of Ben Franklin, a dear friend of mine. We did a lot of co-consulting. Actually, the 2 of us were in the franchise business together. She had helped get Ben Franklin. We nicknamed her Mom Franklin. And so when she left, she finished her obligation. She said, I love this franchising thing. I'd like to do it again, but I want to do it right this time. She said, do you have anybody that's interested in it? And I said, well, I know one guy that I worked with who was in the drain and sewer business in Philly. And when I first came to his shop, he was talking about licensing and franchising. I have a story that comes back to this. Anyway, I call him up, and many years down the road, and I go, hey, you still interested in the franchising thing? And he says to me, I've been waiting by the phone for your call. And so, it was this wonderful marriage between the 3 of us, and being able to, but it really acid tested what I had done at my own company, which is created to be less people rescuing the day and more systems. And backing this story up even further is, after I had read that book that Ellen Rohr and my good friend Dan said that I had to read, E-Myth by Michael Gerber. This is not a plug for his book, but if you have nothing else to do in your entire life, go read that book, and you will understand what I understood pretty quick. If you're always working in the business and never on it, nothing really much is going to change. And that was so profound to me. So now I finally knew why things didn't work. And he described, what a system business looks like. So now I know what that should be. And it gave me 0 in the how. But one thing I can tell you is I'm pretty good at how. And so I hired my friend, the other one, Dan Holohan, the great industry guru guy, because for years I had tried to write my own manuals. And every time I wrote my own manuals, they came out looking like a law book. Article 1-.635. Good luck selling that to your staff. Anybody out there? There's no way they're going to be able to do it. And actually, I had learned an early, painful lesson. I had an employer-employee manual. I guess it was 250, 300 pages. Went to court because we had a problem. We were a New York City union shop. So any of you listeners out there who think that all this stuff about manuals are never going to work in my shop, I was a New York City union shop. So please tell me again why it won't work. Anyway, so I went to court. The judge is thumbing through it, and he goes, do you have meetings on this? I go, no. He says, is this in plain English that anybody could understand it? I go, I don't know. He goes, case dismissed. I was 25.
Wow.
And in that crushing moment, I learned some of the most valuable lessons. If it's not in plain English and it's not in the culture and read all the time, it's not worth back then paper that you wrote it on. So this time I didn't make the same mistake. I hired my friend who ran all these meetings, and to his great credit, I figured the tech should have a meeting, the CSR should have the meeting, the dispatcher should have the meeting, the AR should have their meeting. He goes, no. Everybody affects one another. And so we're going to put them all around the table, and we're going to talk about each of the tasks we do and how it intersects in the rest of it, which is why the manuals, what I call the triangle of communication, is customer service rep, the happy hostess on the phone, captures all the information, it either builds all the sales momentum or destroys all of your sales momentum. Makes the customer feel good, not that, especially in a New York shop, they don't sound like you interrupted their day. Mm-hmm. So they make you feel good. And then they pass the call off to the dispatcher. And even if it's them, when they hang up, they have to magically turn into somebody different, which is the dispatcher. How do I maximize the billable hours? How do I get the right people? How do I keep everybody in touch? How do I make the techs happy and the rest of it? Get all the information to the tech. Tech runs the call. They need to know what they need to know from the time they woke up today to the time they go to bed, other than the cleaning, the restoration, the pest control, the plumbing, the heating, the cooling, the electric, the roofer that I worked with, kitchen cabinetry. I actually worked with a photographer, a commercial photographer. And when she called me, I said, I take pictures, but I'm not. She goes, stop. I read all your stuff. My photographers are your techs. My dispatcher is the person who sends them out to their jobs. And so really the org chart is pretty much the same. And so, yeah, that really is how our business finally in the 90s came under control. We spent $150,000 in today's money, and it's a fraction of what there is today. But within 2 years, we paid it back.
Right.
And people always go, how did you do that? It dramatically stopped our callback rate, which just means running back to do the same work. You want to talk about a profit drain? Mm-hmm. Callback ratio. Now, that was the 90s. Right. So then back then we were just worried about Better Business Bureau and you telling 20 of your friends. Today I'm going online and I'm telling the whole world how much you stink.
Right.
So talking about your review thing you were mentioning before, the stakes are way higher to do that. But we could also maximize each call we went on because they were better trained, the CSRs, the dispatcher and techs. Plus, when they got to the call, they maximized the opportunity by making good recommendations and doing the full repair instead of a partial bad repair that was going to bounce back tomorrow. And this really changed our company for the better, including the way that our org chart was set up.
I think it's really key. I'm listening to what you're saying, and I was going to interject with a question saying, tell us a little bit about why you created the 7-power contractor system, but you just defined it in a simple nutshell of a group of systems and operational things. Think about this. The military, going way, way back, not the U.S. military, we can go way, way back. If they went into battle without a strategy, they'd all perish. You can't just, and think there was a strategy at one point where we'll line them up and they'll get shot down and then the next line will get it. It was a strategy. It was a stupid strategy, but it was a way at one point in time for people to have a battle. But over time, they got smarter. They realized, listen, maybe if we're more strategic, we hide over here, we find points, we find high ground, we make sure we can, there's a lot of variables that the military did. And they've been doing this for centuries. Okay. And something you're just explaining it in the simplest of English you possibly can is saying, if you don't have these things and these procedures in place, it's chaos. It can be managed chaos, but it's still chaos no matter how you go about it. What you've been able to do, and I get a chance to download the book and listen to the book, is you've been able to put a lot of that in place. You've taken some of those simple lessons you learned from Michael Gerber about things, but you put things in place to make things more manageable. Your business isn't worth, and I've said this for a long time, your business is worth nothing if you don't have something in place where the new owner that purchases your business can take it from day one and realize an ROI and how long it's going to take him to pay it back. If the person actually has the money to come out and purchase your business and invest in your business, they've already got a timetable. If they don't, you just got really lucky. But most people that I know acquire businesses are not that way. They're going to look at it and say, okay, how long can I take? Is this a 3-year burn? Is this going to be 3 years? Is it going to be 5 years? What's going to be, or how are we going to pay back purchasing this business? And what do they have in place that requires me not to have to do every single part of it? Or even if I have a partner, where that operating partner has got to do a certain part of it. You've been able to put this thing in place where you can bring people in, no matter who it is, even if there's a changeover in staff, you buy the company and the guy they don't like the new ownership, whatever it happens quite a bit. But there's things in place to make sure from day one you hit the ground running. You're not you're not like, oh my God, I lost all my people. Well, people are important. But it's a variable. People come and go. In the music business, people come and go. In life, in businesses, people come and go. And if you don't have any kind of framework built up, you're going to fall. It's like a house. If the house has no solid framework.
That is a great analogy. It's just like a house.
It's the only thing I can think of. How can your systems, I'm asking the questions that our friend Ryan, but I really thought they were questions. How can this system benefit home service providers? I said to you in the background, I have a lot of people that listen to this in disaster restoration, but I'm gaining people in the plumbing HVAC business because I do have a working knowledge of that, and I have a lot of friends in it. One of my best friends growing up was an HVAC and plumber. So at an early age, I knew how, what valves were and pressure fittings and things of that nature. And of course, when I was marketing to people that were in the plumbing and HVAC industry, I wanted to learn about what they did, because then I had a working knowledge. Say I was out and we were at the back end of the job usually. So we would do the cleanup afterward, maybe a pipe burst or whatever. But an adjuster might ask, hey, what happened here? But I can't get the plumber on the phone. He's busy, he's whatever. And I would have to have some type of variable working knowledge to do that. And I think about that. That's the framework that gentleman gave to me to say, you know what, you had a working knowledge of what I did just by watching and listening. But that benefit, if I didn't get that training from that person, how would I ever be able to dictate that information to the insurance adjuster? Sure, I might have had more working knowledge of what burst and if it was PEX or if it was copper or whatever that was. But without that framework in place, I would have never been able to do that. And I think about when you're talking about the systems, how it can benefit a company. It's not just you run a carpet cleaning company, you run a disaster restoration company, you run a painting company, you run an HVAC company. A company is a company is a company. There are ultimately variables in every single business. However, the systems are the same. It's just you have to retrofit them into your business. So that was my question here. How can service businesses that necessarily are not in plumbing, HVAC, and can benefit from things like this? Because I would think it's apples to apples at that point.
It is the contracting business. My father, we were serial entrepreneurs, my family, just to be clear. My dad had me and my older brothers in business meetings in the back of the room. We were allowed to sit there, but don't say anything, because afterwards he would explain. And so we owned a radiant heat manufacturer. We owned multi-state real estate. We had a chain of liquor stores. We had an ice cream shop, and it was serial businesses. And everyone would love to tell my dad, their business is so different. And he would hold his thumb and forefinger like that much. But, the systems that I talk about, so to be clear, the 7 systems are planning power, operating power, staffing power, sales coaching power, marketing power, and financial. 7. Now, that may not be profound to you, but let me share my days before I became more enlightened. I thought there were 7 million things I needed to know because I was pretty smart. Heck, I got a diploma, everything, even when I blow the dust off it periodically. But the reality is it was craziness. And that because we didn't approach it as systems. So if you were looking to build a pyramid, as an example, the bigger and stronger the blocks at the bottom, which, by the way, are those 7 blocks I blurted out, that's really going to dictate how big, how far, where you can go, and what you can do. My systems are in a garage door company, which I was never in the garage door business. But the great Tommy Mello, who happens to be here, is in now 35 places.
Right.
So how do you replicate? Most of you listening today, you couldn't open an office across the street and expect it to run the same way because you don't have repeatable systems. You don't tell these people what they need to do to fill their box on the org chart. So what the example I explained about the org chart, It's not the fancy CIO, CFO, CEO, CTO, all the crazy. It's the boxes it takes to run your company. And every contracting company, including an $85 million a year condo builder in Montreal, uses my org chart that's on my page to this day, because that's the basics of the things that they need to do. Is it a service or is it an install? And then there's just these basic things that you need to do. And so contracting businesses are more alike than unalike. I worked with a commercial roofer in Iowa. No, I've been on a roof to fix HVAC, but I was not a commercial roof. But if I sit with people, mechanical stuff, it's the same. Even when years and years ago, we realized that fuel oil days were numbered, but the reality is there was still more time. But I wasn't going to wait around. Really, for myself, the biggest thing was I wasn't going to let you come into my customer's basement and take my customers away, because I didn't do plumbing. I didn't do gas heating. I didn't do air conditioning. I didn't do electric. And so what we had discovered happily is when we wrote a manual and we built a training center for them, hands-on training center, so that they could learn all of the tasks that were in the manual, and then built the bridge, which is training curriculum in blocks, and become great trainers. We could make as many techs as we want. Hey, all of you listening, you got more techs that are really trained well than you could possibly use right now? I'm thinking not, but my companies are, people that I work with are, because they can take young, willing apprentices with no skills and move them up from apprentice to junior tech to senior tech to field supervisor. They can go off and run a branch. They can go up the sales wing. They have enormous opportunities to create a career, not just a job.
And there's a big thing. So as you were saying this, I'm thinking of as an example, toolbox. Okay. Now, if you're a carpenter or you're a disaster restoration guy and you're a tech guy, you're going out in the field, you know you have a hammer to take out molding and a pry bar. You know you have a hammer to take out a wall. You have a hammer and a pry bar that could be used for but they're not all the same hammers. They're all in the toolbox because you needed all these parts to do a job. Even on our trucks, we have tool bags, simple tool bags, and we've got, multitude of wrenches and all kinds of screwdrivers and stuff we need to use on a daily basis. They're in every truck. They're itemized. If you lose them, you must replace them. It's that simple. They're not expensive for the most part, but you don't want to lose them, because the last thing you want to do is get to a job where you need your tools. It's there. So, the guys are trained. They need this screwdriver for this. They need this wrench for this. They need this for this. It's all part of the toolbox or the 7 systems, as you're explaining. But if you don't know what parts to use and you're not utilizing the parts that are in there, I would imagine that would be the biggest challenge to somebody to just get over that fact that, yes, you need these different parts to make your life more efficient. You need to make sure there's 2 different wrenches, that one might be small and big because I've got to take this pipe apart to change out a filter. We
teach the apprentices that from the day they arrive.
Right.
They don't get in a truck to go help. We spend the first 5 to 10 days training them up.
Right.
We don't assume anything, and we click them off the checklist. We get them successful right away. So by the time they climb in your truck, right, they can be helpful. And they're beginning to put time on their clock to come to my dedicated apprentice to junior tech training, because my goal is to get them in the truck and get them in the truck to be successful. And the 3 skills I look for in a service tech is good communications, which leads to good sales, neat and clean, operational, themselves, the truck, and the job sites. And the last thing is, you came here for this problem. You don't want the same problem tomorrow. And installers, their job is good communications, make sure the customer is in the loop, neat and clean themselves, neat and clean the truck, and the job is neat and clean. And they commission the job. In other words, explain to the customer how to do it and that it's working right, and that they can do a technically excellent install. And that is really the fundamental, most key people, because that's who makes the money at your company. Those are the people that completely change your dynamics, but they're not the only ones. The CSR you and I were talking about, if the customer service rep stinks, or like they say, they sound like you interrupted their day, which is a New York thing. Mm-hmm. So they're automatically not, their job is to be the happy hostess who gets all the right information and builds sales momentum, and then hands it off to the dispatcher, maximize billable hours, get it down to the tech. Tech knows what they need to do. from the time they woke up to the time they go to bed, other than the restoration work, the carpet cleaning, or anything else.
Right.
And that is really where most companies are broken, right there.
It's just the simple thing. I talk about this. I talked this in my first book, and I talked about it on a previous podcast. I talked about housing and framework. Do people pay contractors to come out and stand around and drink coffee and look at the project and say, hey, maybe we can put a wing over here. Maybe we'll put a header over here. Maybe that'll be okay. No, you pay them to build the damn house. You pay, you want it efficiently done. And I was explaining this to my wife today. I don't know how to look at things inefficiently. And our crew's the same way. Like when we're in a house, could we spend more time in the house? Yes, but why? Customers aren't paying us for our time for the most part. They're paying us to come out and do the job correctly. And the better your training and your systems are in place, you can do it. I'm in a house with one of our guys today, big house, and right on the river, multi-million-dollar house. And we're in there, and I didn't spec out the house. He did. So we get there, and he says, we got to go back here. We got to go up the stairwell and go across. And as we're doing this, as I'm going there, I'm going, isn't there a set of steps over here? And he's like, yeah. He says, are we cleaning the set of steps over there? Yes. I says, yes, it's on the list to do it. I was like, so the set of steps up here goes up to the top? Yes. What else is up at the top? Well, the master bedroom or clean area rugs. So let's look at this circle and say, should we run these lines all the way across to look busy, to look like we're important, to make it look like we're building more value, which we're not? Or should you run up the damn steps and go into the bedroom, therefore eliminating running that? Then we had a lower level, and a customer says, oh, I have an entrance door there. It's that kind of house. They have a separate entrance into the
yeah, I can imagine.
Now, that's the best thing we could do is get everything ran up there and get everything cleaned, dry it up, go back downstairs, pull all of our hoses back out. And that's a pain in the ass, but it's the right thing to do. And then go downstairs, closing their door to their very, very nice home that they probably don't want a door open in. By the way, they're incredibly nice people. And so we went down and ran it straight through. And he's like, wow, I thought I was going to have to go here and here. I'm like, you have to look at a job and run it the most efficient way possible. Why do you want to put more work on your back? Nobody's paying you, me or them, to make the job look harder. They want the result. And I think our people in general want a result. And if you want a duplicatable system, I think our common friend Howard Partridge said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you don't put things in place like this and have a manageable system for everybody to learn from, a framework that everybody can follow, I think forget about just failure. I think about just bashing my head against the wall at 100 miles an hour. It just doesn't make any sense. It's the inefficiencies.
Yeah, there's just, you ask yourself, where does your time go? Just like that. So I always tell the story, because you bring up about inefficiency. I was blessed and cursed by having a great service manager when I was young. And he was totally empowered to abuse myself and my brother Richie. My dad gave him the power to not hold back. And so I was doing install work, and I was calling callbacks and things of that nature. And he said to me, this was very scary, because I want you to picture a drill sergeant. He's chomping on a cigar, and he goes, I'm going to be your helper today. And you can imagine how nervous I was. So he gets in my truck. We get to the call, and I'm running to go downstairs. He goes, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to go down to the job and start doing stuff. He goes, stop. Grab stuff off the truck, take it downstairs. And I'm just about to plop it on the floor. I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. You didn't put anything to protect the floor. And so I had to put stuff down, which I never did. And then I'm going there, and I have a Sawzall in my hand. So all you guys out there, let's face it, we love the power tools.
Amen.
Well, yours truly couldn't wait to cut stuff. But the problem was I never tagged anything. I didn't tag the wires. I didn't tag the pipes. And so I'm getting ready, and he goes, stop, go tag these wires, go tag these pipes, and doing the rest of it. Anyways, we're going through this job. I'm looking at my watch, and he says, stop it. And so I just doing whatever I'm doing. And finally I look at it again, and he just makes it this clear. He goes, if you look at your watch one more time, you won't have a wrist to wear it on. So he says, you can look at the watch when I tell you. So we finish up the job. And so I finished the job. And for the first time, all the wires go where they're supposed to. 1, pipes go back to where they're supposed to. 2, 3 is when instead of like all day long throwing boxes over my shoulder because I made a mess, everything's neat and organized. I know everything I've used. And then when it came time to clean up, this was new because usually I'd spend another half an hour on the floor, my hands and knees, cleaning the area. But now all I did was roll up the red rosin paper and cardboard, put all the stuff back in my truck, and we're out at the truck. He goes, look at your watch. And I had finished this job better than any job I had ever done, 1 hour and 30 minutes faster.
Wow.
So in that moment, I learned about, he had a great line, which I have to always try and make sure I clean up. He said, don't put your butt in gear until your mind has moved first. So he wanted me to think ahead. And that was when you're young, you want to impress, you want to go fast. Right. And because you got to make up with your energy, what you don't know, because if you were like me, ready to get in there and show everybody how great you are when you're really not, because you don't know enough. But that was really a life changer for me because of what you're speaking to. But part of the problem too is we assume that they know. Wouldn't they know to go up that step? No. So we used to run classes with people at our house, a custom, place, not a customer's house. One thing we tried to really stop was what we had always relied on. And we had a nickname for it, OTJB, which is on the job training, And so that really means your customer is paying for you to come to my house today while you're learning how to do your job. We stop that. You get educated on our manuals and in our hands-on training center. And yes, periodically we're out on a job, but in most cases, like commercial jobs, we used to tell the customer, we're coming to your place today. We're going to do it cheaper than normal. And the reason is we're running a class there, which means it'll be even more expert. And when we get done and you have a problem, now there are 5 more guys who can come to your job. So you're going to wait less time. I never got an answer that said no, ever.
I wouldn't imagine you would, because you're paying for it's like, think about, you go in a hospital and, you go up there and you have a doctor, and the doctor goes, I think I know what's wrong with him or her, but I'm not quite sure. So then he goes out and he calls another doctor, brings another doctor in. And then you finally get a specialist in, because really you have a heart problem. You need to have a heart doctor in there. Originally you started with just a general MD, which might have been a great doctor and a great person, but he was smart enough to bring in a row of experts, including ultimately the one that probably had the most experience in the area to help. And that gentleman you had in there, you talked about, that really kind of, he might have had a brash way to do it, but he's leaving an impact. And clearly, based on your story you just said to me, he left an impact for the rest of your life. And that impact was stop and think about what you're doing before you cut things open, before you open things up. It goes back to what we were talking about before. Strategy before tactics is a fast lesson to failure. If you don't think about what you're doing and plan things out, you're not going to be able to do, what you need to do. And in the business you're in plumbing, if people are listening to this and they're plumbing, HVAC, especially plumbing, you might be dealing with a gas line. Okay. You're dealing with people's lives. Okay. You're not, and you can speculate, that the DOB in New York does not play. I was in many master plumbing council meetings, marketing, and I had them come there and talk. And I was like, I got done. I'm like, man, why are these guys even doing this? This is insane what they have to put up with.
It's a lot of, I can tell you,
bureaucracy.
Oh yeah. And it's a lot of try making all these people happy, but it's a lot easier when you've got manuals, training, and system. So let me speak to the plumbers for a minute. Mm-hmm. And you're going, yeah, that's all nice. I'm going to give you got more calls than you can humanly do in a day, which is exactly what you want. Because when you have way more calls than you can do in a day, guess who sets the price? Guess who decides what work you do and don't do? You. So that's your enviable position. So now you need to catch up with more great techs who can maximize each of those calls. So I'm going to give you 10 great plumbers. They were trained in different places. They're all good. What's the chances they could leave your shop, be an hour away, and all of them would do a toilet reset exactly the same way if you never defined it in writing and you never had them prove it out to you in your training center? I'm going to help you out. Right. 0. Mm-hmm. You have 0 chance of that. And that was what we finally took charge of this. So there's a way. You don't wake up one day and figure out what to do. HVAC guys, tell me if this sounds familiar. We had tune-ups. We had 25 guys. Mm-hmm. So when we were doing this process with the manuals, we were talking to them about how we go through our tune-ups. Mm-hmm. Well, we had like 27 ways of doing it because Two guys weren't really sure. They were changing their mind while they were spitting it out. Now we ended up with one way that we do our tune-ups, and then we deal with the exception. Part of the big lesson here is cover the 80% of what goes on. Don't get caught up in the 20 weird. Don't chase perfection. You're never going to get hold of it. It's your inability to handle 80% of what goes on. The phone that rings, the dispatch, the plumbing call, the heating call, the carpet cleaning call, the restoration call, the rest of it, like it's the first time you're ever doing it. Or anywhere that your guys go anywhere. Right now, without manuals, training, and systems, I'll make it easy for you. They can do anything they want, and you have to take it. You like that? I'm betting you don't.
I wouldn't think anybody would. I mean, it's again, you want less stress. Why do you want to add more stress to your life than having things in place? I mean, unless you're just that kind of person, you're self-defeating and say, I like the stress. I like the anxiety.
It's very, you and I were talking about that, before the call, we were mentioning about the way we are wired as human beings, and not, I'm so smart and I know all, but we defend our decisions. We start our decision-making with emotions, and then we defend it with logic. If you think you're a logical thinker, you don't know what you don't know. So one of the things that I had to learn, and it was fortunate I had the great Dan Hollahan, who was the heating guru, but he was more than that. He was riding in my truck and the phone was ringing and everybody was asking for me years before the manuals and all the training comes along. And he looks at me and he goes, "You think that's normal?" And in that moment, here's what I thought to myself. Yeah, it is. And I hate it. And the next second, here's what I thought. You know what? I'm pretty indispensable and I like it. And so I was causing the problem. So that's when I always talk about rescuer, guru, fireman. Right. And if you like the way I described, I liked riding to the rescue. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really proactively help them avoid needing me to come in and rescue them. I like being a fireman. If you're a little boy, do you remember when you liked playing fireman? Because I do. So I would not only like putting out the fires, unconsciously, I helped set those fires.
Right.
And then I liked being the guru. I went to all the best training. They didn't. And now they had to come to me to get the knowledge. Well, that's bad when you're in a 24/7, 365 business.
Yes, it is.
Because they used to wake me up at night and I'd be angry at them, but it was me.
Right.
It was me all along. Hey, I want to make sure I answer Ryan's questions. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's one of the things he did say, and I thought this was a really brilliant question. What is the greatest lesson you could pass on to a young business owner? So say they're just they're an owner operator at this point. They're just starting. Maybe they got another truck, whatever it is. But let's just say they're, for devil's advocate, they are an owner operator. That's the way their business model is set up. And they're like, same thing as we're just discussing here the whole time. I can't keep doing this. I'm getting old. I'm whatever. This sucks. Even if they've got a good system in place for themselves, like they are like, I know where the crap is on my truck. I know where this is. I know how to get to this. I know how to do this. But that's me. It's me, myself, and I. I had a client once that wanted me to help them scale their business. It was a husband and wife business at the time. And he was a great salesman, great personality, just an awesome guy, technical master. And she was really good with the office stuff and admin and marketing. And they really were a great team when it came to that. But they brought me in to tell them how to get this person off the truck and get other people in. Well, that's a pretty simple fix. I mean, I came from multi-truck companies. I only knew multi-truck companies. I didn't really know owner-operators except for the one I started myself. And I said to them, well, I'm looking at the whole thing. I go out with them. I take a ride around with them. And I realized that you can't replace John. Okay. His name is John. And John is a great guy. And he's been a guest on my show too as well. John is not, even though John is a wealth of information, not everybody is going to be John. Not everybody's going to be Mike. Not everybody's going to be Bruce. Everybody's going to be different. So if you're trying to duplicate the same person, you can't duplicate a person. You can duplicate a system. He has a system, unintentional. It's experience, it's time, it's just him. But you can't make everybody John. You got to make everybody whoever they are. You got to have things in place in order to make that happen. So going back to the original question, What's some of the business, the biggest lessons that maybe, or an example of a lesson that a new startup can really help get out of that mindset of it's me and I have a system in place, but it's not duplicatable?
I'm going to start with what's the best piece of advice, and then I'm going to work back to make sure I cover the systems. So when we were in business, my dad just, work hard, run fast, and the money will follow. And by the way, that is not true for all businesses out there. So don't delude yourself. But we were lucky, but it was a very killing process. And there's a reason that my tagline has always been less stress and more success. Now, I was getting money, so I had the success down, but I had a ball of stress that was going to kill me.
Right.
And I was not looking for that. So you've got to come under control, if you will. So one of the things that you need to take control of is how much should you charge? And so that's why I would recommend to this day, Ellen Rohr's book, and it's Rohr is her last name. Ellen Rohr was the great financial queen. She learned from the great Frank Blau at his footsteps. And she was really the first to teach me that, there's way more than the cost of you buying stuff and what you think your labor is worth. And there's all of, there's the building, there's insurance, there's, the truck costs, the replacement cost. I mean, it's so much more stuff than the job itself. Right. And most of us as young owners and even older owners never get that. So we need to know what we need to charge. So her first book is Where Did the Money Go? Because owner operators in particular go, I'm working hard, there's no overhead, where's the money?
Right.
And until they read that book, they will not know why. Then their second book in sequence is How Much Should I Charge? Because most of us call on the phone, excuse me, what's your price? And then, will be $5 less, which by the way is illegal. But anyway, the point is that guy's going broke. You want to model that guy?
Right.
So the point to it is, you need to know what it is you need to charge to make the money you desire. Ultimately, the reason I'm starting here is you've got to charge enough that you, John, can get off the truck and can afford to get somebody else on that truck. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll never get on the truck, but you're not the first guy up, and then getting more people on the truck. So yes, manuals and training, there's a load of things that you can do, but nothing, in my opinion, is going to get better than that. When you look at my org chart, you'll see there's 2 boxes on there that no matter how big your company gets, and I've worked with monster companies that work in multiple states to this day. And I tell the owners something they do not want to hear. You are never leaving the financial manager, and you are never leaving the marketing manager. Well, I'm not really good at numbers. I got to get somebody else.
Learn.
It's your money. You're going to be a victim constantly if you don't. Now, you don't have to generate the numbers. You don't have to become an accountant, CEO, but you got to make sure that you cannot have the wool pulled over your eyes. It's that critical that the information given to you is timely and that it's right, and that you can make financial adjustments on the fly. So you will get some of that in those 2 books that I mentioned, the ability to help fill that financial manager. Marketing manager is, you could be the best company in the world, and if we don't have calls, we're going broke.
Right.
So there's the simple, because we're only in a podcast there, we're not in a 5-day learning class. Right. But marketing power, as I define in the book, is the right amount of calls from the right customer. Here, I'll help you. Not everyone is your customer. I grew up with that myth. It's wrong. It is dead wrong. Right amount of customers, the right amount of calls from the right customer. Here's the last one at the right time, because you want to be able to dial it up, dial it down, be able to control it. And this is where it gets really crazy. There's got to be more calls than you can humanly do in a day, like we talked about already, because I can charge more money. I can replace myself. I can put on new people that can run and get those calls done. So that is really to just the owner operator, without flooding you with, oh, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, is understand to take control of that financial, what you should charge, learn how to do budgeting. That's the most important thing. Learn how to make more calls than you can humanly do. And then, yeah, you know what? I've got manuals, training systems. I can build staff. I've got another program coming out. There's plenty of help out there for all the other 7 power concepts.
I was thinking about I talked about this in actually one of my last podcasts, difference between marketing and selling. And a lot of people think they're selling, and they'll say, I have a client that said, I hate selling. Okay. So why do you hate selling? Well, I hate, going to people and knocking on their doors or going to meetings and promoting online and do this. Is what you just described has nothing to do with the sale. Ultimately results in a monetary gain. It means money came from the consumer's hand and then made it to your bank account. It came from one to the other. A sale only happens after marketing has been effective. So if your marketing is done well and you have something in place that will drive those buyers to come in and work with you, and the sales process is relatively easy. I mean, we do enough between, and just in our business, reviews are huge. That's why I wrote the book.
yeah.
It's coming out soon, called Welcome to the Review Society. Between 18 and 80, why it matters, why they matter, is because we're in a review-based society today. I mean, people are buying.
I'm going to go on
Yelp.
Yelp. And I'm going to go on Yelp just to interrupt you 1 second. Years ago, when I first started doing one-to-one, because I started this second career 20 years ago, I would, ask the owner, where should I go? What should I do? It got to the point in the last 10 years, I don't even ask them. I go to Yelp, look at the reviews, look how many reviews there are, and I know where I need to go. So if you're thinking, well, people who are 50 and older, they don't go online and look at reviews. You're wrong. You're dead wrong. And so what you're saying here is so on spot. I will say one little tweak that I would do, and this is
Sure.
myself and the great Ellen Rohr we've had plenty of time together. So of course we have stupid conversations, but she asked me one day, she goes, what comes first, sale or marketing? And I go, sales. She goes, well, your phone doesn't ring. I go, look, if you don't know how to sell to me, your ideal customer, you don't know what makes me tick, you can't sell to 10 of me, 100 of me, or 10 million of me. So if you really become great at sales and systematic about understanding that, it leads. So they're really, what I like to think of it is sales and marketing are two sides of the same coin.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and they're two sides to it, but they're two entire differences that people tend to lump into one.
That's why they're on the same coin, but they're not the same side of the coin.
Exactly. It's the biggest. This business I built on Facebook, free. I would put my posts on. I would do content. I learned how to be a much better copywriter, writing real content based on what consumers want, not what I want. No technical speak needed. They're not going to read that. They would have a picture of something and a story. A story is the key word behind what it was, and that would make them go, "Wow, I saw that, and that's good." It would have the customers were fine with it. It had nothing identifiable to the house. It was just a picture of the change in the. Our biggest focus was tile and grout. So you want to see, wow, my grout looks terrible, and I just seen this picture. And then, of course, they go, is it real? And then they start reading it. And then that leads them down the rabbit hole of, well, let's check into these guys. Wait a minute. They got great reviews and they've been around and they're here and they're local. Everything's great at that point. It's a system to make it work. I agree. Marketing is absolutely a system. And that's what I talk about. If you don't have a marketing plan in writing and it doesn't have the marketing budget as a percentage of sales and the marketing drivers and the marketing calendar, which most people blow. They don't have a calendar dated backwards through the year to proactively drive them through the marketing cycle. Right. That's going to be a problem. But the thing about the marketing is, because I would help people with their truck design. And when I would arrive, it was a white truck, like everybody else's white truck. And it had everything all over, like as a sales brochure. So nobody looked at anything. And then, of course, it was done by the equipment man because they had a co-op thing. And there's equipment, like they think their customers understand that. They don't. Their customer testimonials was a piece of equipment. I said, no. It's the person. I'm buying that person. That person looks like me. And they say you're great. Where do I sign? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lot of the reviews I have, just in particular, will say my name. Now, I don't know if I'm happy about that or not happy about that. But if you get them on the phone, they sure are glad they're talking to Rob because they read the reviews. Now, it could be anybody, but it's just who the reviews go from. If you were to focus on one part of somebody's company that will help them improve the most, I know you have seven parts to it. However, is there one area, and again, I'm reading his question, one part that they should focus on more than the others to get started immediately, even though all are very important and they're all very important. So when I did one-to-one consulting, which I don't do anymore now, everything is online. Like you said, there's 7 of my kids. There's a reason there's 7, but everything starts with planning. So whoever you are out there, you go online, you belong to these groups online, you get an article, you read
5, 10, 20, 500 books on business, and you think it all fits together. I'm here to tell you it does not. You are building a Frankenstein, or what I usually talk about is a car. Imagine you want to build your dream car. So you're going to take a Ford chassis, put a Toyota engine in it, Hyundai seats. It doesn't work. So you have to have a cohesive, using my 7 pillars as an instance. You then use that metric as to what you pull in and what you use. So what I tell guys is, do you need one more good idea, or do you need one good idea implemented? So planning power for our overcrowded minds is so important. So think of the funnel. The top of that funnel is 100 or 125 projects and habits that you need to get in the next 3 to 5 years. And every good idea that you hear from your buddy down the street, or the book you read, or the seminar, webinar, whatever you attended, it goes up there first, top of the hopper. And then it goes down because it either fixes the biggest problem or challenge, greatest chance to grow profitable. So people go, can you give me an answer? So they get to a job an hour away and they don't have the necessary wrenches that they use all the time. I should get that on the truck. Mm-hmm. Or the greatest chance to grow and be profitable. If I had some more testimonials, I could sell more of this, because people already know this is good, but nobody knows. So those are how it sinks down to your top 30. 30, not all of these are projects. A lot of these are habits. Can you delegate properly? Because I'm betting you couldn't, because I couldn't for a while. That's why I wrote the steps of delegation. Do you know how to run good meetings? Because I'm betting you don't. I do. 10 golden rules for meetings. There are things you have to learn. So it's projects and habits. These 30 things that you're telling me are going to affect your company in a positive way. No one, the biggest companies I've worked with, and I've worked with monster companies, no one can get 30 things done at the same time right. Yeah. So you have to filter it one more time, same strainer, get it to your top 5. And here's the trick. Put it on a wall that everybody sees it, because everyone's going to hold you accountable to whether you really mean it or not. Now, you have a crazy week. There's water all over the place. Somebody hurt his knee and he was down working on the carpet. And should I go on to all the things that go into business?
Right.
And I am empathetic to your plight. But you said those 5 things are going to dynamically change our company. So you tell me how you get to skip working on this during the course of the week. Because if you keep on skipping this, nothing's changing. Nothing is changing.
I'm thinking about a simple example, and I want everybody to listen to this example, because if you really think about it, everybody's had it. Seatbelts. Okay? You put on a seatbelt. We're all supposed to have a seatbelt on. It's the right thing. It's the law, pretty much everywhere in the country. But one day you decide not to put that seatbelt on. You go, I'll put it on down the block, or you just forget. You're busy, you're on the phone, you're talking, whatever it is. Follow me here. So you don't do it. The next day or later that day, you skip it again. And then you skip it again. And then you start going down the street before you put the seatbelt on. I know, I've done it, and I still struggle with it. Instead of putting the damn seatbelt on before you get in the car, or actually turn the ignition on, which is the law, okay? And it is smart, because way more people lose their life over not having a seatbelt than having a seatbelt. What broke the chain? What broke the pattern of knowing you got to put it on before you ever put that truck or car in ignition? You decided one day to break the chain, and now you've created an after effect of not doing it. However, if you force yourself into making sure you put the seatbelt on, make sure that the our mileage is tracked correctly before we go one job to another. If you make sure these systems and policies and procedures are in place and are used every single time, it's a recipe for success. I always said intelligence is applied; it's not learned. Okay.
Yes.
You're not gonna. There's no smarts to something. There's no gain to something by talking about doing something. There's only a gain by doing something. And I think, when I'm listening to what you're saying, and what I read in the book, and what I listened to in the audiobook, because I learn better with listening. I have more time to listen to it than I do always to read. It's that consistency of doing something over and over again. You can be consistently good, you can be consistently not good at something, but you can never ever be inconsistent with what you're doing, because the second you break that chain, you now open a wall of other things to happen.
Yeah,
I'm a creature of habit.
this the way that I always thought is your standards are either getting higher or lower. They're never staying the same. And so when I work with guys along the way, you know, I say, look, we're climbing up a mountain. I know all the hill, I know all the things, I know exactly what to take, and I know the rest spots. But here's what you need to know. You can't stop because it's like rolling a rock up a hill. When you stop, it's coming back as fast, if not faster than you pushed it up. You get spots to rest, you got things to do. So it's easy to start doing bad habits. So if I say, you know what, the truck's got to be neat and clean, but I never check your truck, how well is that going to be? Now, if I check your truck every week, and the way that I would check your truck is objectively, which is there's photos for all of it. They're set up exactly the same. So I could have you in truck 99 today. And if there's a problem, you can be in 100 and work in a heartbeat, because that's how I set my trucks up.
Right.
And I can go to every shelf I want because it was labeled A1, 2, 3, 4, B1, 2, 3, 4. And I can pull out the bands that my apprentices actually built them because they were all the same. And I'll know what it is. But I take a picture of you standing in your good-looking uniform in your good-looking truck, and all I ever do is just wait, because I'm waiting for you to come in one day where it isn't right and go, hey, tell me how you look like this picture, and tell me how your truck looks like this picture.
Right.
You have to have objective standards. You have to have objective evidence, or it's just your opinion. And running your business on your opinion is incredibly ineffective and cruel to everyone who works with you. My brother used to do this. One of my brothers said, oh, he goes, why don't they do this? And why don't they, by the way, these conversations were 2 a.m. in the morning because we were the only ones left. You know, why don't they do this? And why don't they do that? And I just said to him, if they could do all of that, why would they be here? They'd be down the road running their own company.
It's true.
And then one day I just said the same thing over again because we had the same stupid conversations. And I said, Richie, really what you want is a clone that would automatically read your mind. So we'd never have to create these systems in writing and actually run them through it. And that ain't happening. So get over it and get on with it is what I'm saying to all of you who are listening today. The bedrock for all of this is, yeah, you have to have repeatable in systems for every box on your org chart. So I call the org chart, that flat one I was describing, think of it as a bingo board. And your job is to try to cover every square with its own manual. Now, I have a big leg on that because I have that, but I also have the lessons you don't know. And so what are the lessons you don't know? You don't know the tone that you need to write it. Because when you write it all in caps and color underlined, I know you're yelling at me.
Right.
And so, you know, or else you're putting this weird stuff in and you're telling me the whole manual is don't. Have you ever raised kids? Try raising them when you just say no all day. Yeah. Pretty soon they don't hear it.
Right.
So there's tricks and tips that you need to know. What do you put in the manual? What do you leave out? So for all my good friends who do plumbing and gas work in particular, you're in a 60 apartments in a building. Behind one stove, there's a 1/2-inch gas line that's got a leak. Now, what do you know that we need to do? We're going to pull that on the fly because we're not draining this whole building down.
Right.
But you can't put that in the manual.
Right.
You know, so that's what to put in, what to leave out. There's so much more than just words on a page, which of course today is all it is digital.
Right.
And, you know, you get it on digital devices. So yeah, I know I dipped into my second of the powers, but planning is number one.
Right.
In working on those 5 things. But here's what I assure you. If you don't have repeatable systems for each and one of those boxes, you know, the way to do your work, like I mentioned before, going an hour from your shop and they couldn't do it your way, even if they were quote unquote trained, then you have to buy into this org chart and then the manuals that tell you how to do your business. And now most of you might think the trades, I need the trade manual, you know, how I do my work. You do, but that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the CSR, dispatcher tech, accounts receivable, accounts payable, the apprentice manual, everything else. Those are really your biggest problem. Because I have people who do power washing. Now I have a power washing manual because a guy in the business went through all of my manuals and just aced the test as well it is. He goes, I'd love to write a power washing manual. I go, well, I'll do 20 pages, help you out with it, but I got to have it so I can give it to others. And it's great. And, you know, so painters are in this thing and I don't have a paint manual. I got pest guys who are in it. I don't have a pest control because they know their business needs to cover these boxes.
That's a great analogy. I mean, really, you're thinking about, it's almost like playing checkers or chess,
Yes.
and you're moving one part to the other. It's all relative, but you're saying, okay, to get here, I have to do this. To here, I have to do this. In order to win the game, you have to get here. I don't want to have our listeners, because boy, we could talk for quite a while, and boy, I can talk. So if you ever listen to our podcast,
if you like write-ins, tell him he has to do a second podcast with me. How's that?
I think that's a great idea, and I'm going to get Ryan over here next time. He's not going to have an excuse, but he had a good excuse. He had a good excuse.
He lives in where, Jersey?
He's in Jersey. He's actually down the road from me.
No, here's all you have to tell him. He says, listen, Ryan, I know where you live. And if he's a good Jersey boy, he'll know what I mean.
Yeah, he knows. He's a good North Carolina boy that ended up in New Jersey. So
that's funny. Yeah,
because when I was interviewing him, I'm like, how did you get from North Carolina to here? Like, I want to move to North Carolina, and you came.
Yeah, usually right. Yeah, usually you're going down on the East Coast that way.
Yeah, it's like the New York thing. You live in Brooklyn, you move to Staten Island, you move to Jersey. That's the triage.
That's the evolutionary trait. And then when you get old enough, you get to go to Florida, or like in my case, down to Arizona. Yep.
Exactly. It's all a migration. How can our listeners find out a little bit more about you? And yes, I do want to have you on, because I really want to focus on each of these, and I really think they belong in its own podcast episode, not to be presumptive, but I think that would be a good thing to have over time, just to say, hey, we're going to cover this in this podcast specific, because there's obviously a ton of information. It may be simple information, just not easy information. And I think being able to break that down piece by piece would be beneficial. And I think Ryan would be part of it, because he's in that industry. We're both in the service industry, but he in particular has grown an incredible business right here. I love him a lot. He's a great guy, and I call him a great friend. And he's just a really, really bright guy, and it'd be a tremendous asset to have him here. So I will make sure he's at the next one. But how can our listeners find out a little bit more about you from right now at this point in time?
Yeah, the best way to do is to go to my website, the number 7 powercontractor.com. Number 7 powercontractor.com. There's a ton of information there on blogs that I put out there, and I do a blog radio podcast, which is me reading the blogs out loud. So if you're stuck in a truck and you already obviously love this melodic voice of mine, wouldn't you want to hear it on the then you audible. So, but go to there and go look around. There's plenty of information. There is a chat box down at the bottom if you want to reach out to me. I have offered this for the 20 years I've been in business. And I have to be careful because it's going to come sound not genuine. I was lucky and blessed to have great mentors come in my life. When I left my job 20 years ago, I did not have to work. Now I've been busy for 20 years and I've made a really great living, which is a delightful surprise. And so, but I feel the obligation. So I'm willing to meet with a contractor for 30 minutes on the phone and talk about pretty much anything on their business. And if appropriate, I'll tell them what it is I do, because my stuff today is online. Right. And that is the manuals and the training and the systems. And there's more coming, which is going to be in 2022. It'll be another thing that really is going to make a difference. My goal for you, as it was for myself, is that I want you to have less stress and more success. We work really hard. We do. And I want you to get towards the end and realize you cannot sell your business. It's really just, crushing you, or it's causing your family issues and the rest of it. I know what it's like. I've had enough friends like that. I've worked with enough people. I want better for you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much again for being part of this today. And we'll set up some other ones based on our time skin. Again, we'll have Ryan on here and really do a deep dive into each of these, because it's crucial. I mean, you're going to grow a business today. You can't have the, I hate to say it, oh, we love mom and pops as the term goes, but you can't have that mentality today. That's not fiscally responsible, and it's not mentally responsible to yourself to put yourself through that. So I want to thank Al for being here today. And again, I want to thank our sponsor, Sotellus, sotellus.com/Rob Lyon, ROBLYON. You could test drive the system on review management software. I love it. It's simple. It's easy. I've talked about in the past. I will always talk about it no matter what, because I'm a televangelist when it comes to this stuff, a legit televangelist on programs that work, similar to Al's program as well. It was a blessing to read the book and listen to it, being a systems junkie that I am and always have been, and don't know how to think any other way. I loved it. And I just dove right into it immediately and went, wow, okay, this totally, it's a complete buy-in because it just makes sense. It's, you know, you have to go with your gut and go, okay, what makes sense in your business? What makes sense in your life? And if things make sense that are going to help you get to where you need to be a lot quicker than on an 8-lane highway guessing which one's the exit, then this might be a great system for you to look into. And again, Al, thank you so much for your time, my friend.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
You got it, buddy.